Good morning. So today we're talking about the pattern row in the Sculptured Waves wrap, also known as Rising Seas. So I have just done my turning chain, and because this is the first row, I'm going to do my first front loop slip stitch. And as you'll see in the later rows, that number that begins before the pattern row increases with every row. So wave 1 has 1 front loop slip stitch, row 2 has 2, etc. So we're now ready to do the pattern row. So we start with 3 front loop slip stitches, and you might recall that we've got the V-shape stitch here at the top, and the front loop is this little guy here. So we are going to yarn over after we put our hook through that front loop, pull it through that loop and pull it through the original hook loop. And we're going to do that 2 more times. And here's the third one. So hook through the front loop, yarn over, pull it through the front loop and pull it through the loop on the hook. So we've now got a total of 4 front loop slip stitch. We're now going to make a front loop single crochet. So that's starting the same way, with the hook going through the front loop, then yarn over and pulling it through that front loop, and then we just go yarn over and pull it through both. Now we're going to make the half double crochet in the front loop, so it's yarn over first, then hook into the front loop, yarn over, pull it through the front loop, then yarn over and pull it through all 3. Now this is where it gets a little bit tricky. We're going to make another stitch into the same front loop, and this one is a DC. So it's yarn over, hook into that same front loop, yarn over, pull it through the front loop. So you've got 3 on the hook, then yarn over, pull it through 2, yarn over, and pull it through both those loops. We then move on to the next stitch where we're doing a front loop single crochet, so it's yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through those 2. And then we go back to making our front loop slip stitches. So it's yarn over and pull through both for 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, and 6. And you'll see that I've got a stitch marker on the 13th stitch here. That's just so I know that I've got the correct count on the waves, because I find that using the stitch markers I actually do less counting. I'm not a huge fan of counting. So that's our first little wave made. It's quite a low profile wave without a picot. We do a total of 3 of those, so the first 3 waves are identical. So we go front loop slip stitch, front loop slip stitch, and front loop slip stitch. So counting back from my stitch marker, I've got 3 of those, and then I do front loop single crochet, front loop half double crochet, then going into the same front loop, I'm doing my half loop DC, and then in the next loop I do my front loop single crochet, and then I do 6 front loop slip stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that is now my second wave, and then I'll do that again for the third wave. I've just finished wave 3, so I'm now ready to start wave 4, which is exactly like the first 3 waves, but it's got the first of the peacock. So we start with a front loop slip stitch and another, so we're putting our hook into the front loop, yarn over, pulling it through both, and then the third one. Then we do our front loop single crochet and our front loop half double crochet, so yarn over, hook into the front loop, yarn over, pull it through, so we've got 3 on the hook, and then yarn over, pull it through all 3. Then we make into the same front loop our front loop DC, now looking at our DC, you can see that the last part of making the DC is where you have these 2 loops on the hook, and then you go yarn over and you pull it through both. It's those 2 loops that we use in our peacock, so it sits lower down on the wave. So rather than a standard peacock, we're doing a top loop peacock, and it uses these 2 loops. So we're going to go yarn over and pull it through these 2 loops to finish our DC. And then this is a 1 chain peacock, so we're going to go yarn over, pull it through, and then we're going to go back through those last 2 loops, yarn over, pull it through the 2 loops, and also pull it through the loop on the hook. And then we continue the wave as we did previously, so hook into the front loop to make a front loop SC, and then we make our 6 front loop single crochets. And you can see I'm finishing up on the stitch marker again, so I know that I've got the right count of single crochets there and front loop crochets and single slip stitches, etc. So we're going to do that for another 2 waves, and then we'll move on to the next waveform. Alright, I have just finished wave 6, and you can see it has the little peacock, which gives it the wave peak. So I'm ready to start wave 7 and 8. So this is where things start changing up a bit. We start with 2, not 3, but 2 front loop slip stitch. And then we go to a front loop single crochet, and then we do a front loop half double crochet, and this one is by itself. The double stitch combination in the next front loop is a front loop DC, and then a front loop extended double crochet. So it's yarn over, hook, hook into the front loop, yarn over. We've got 3 on the hook after we pull it through, and then we go yarn over and we pull it through just 1 loop. That gives us our extended, and then we go yarn over and pull it through 2, and we've got our last 2 on the hook, then we go yarn over and pull it through both. Now we're going to do a single chain top loop peacock, so it's yarn over to pull it through to make the first chain. We go back through those 2 last loops of the DC, yarn over and pull it through those 2 loops, and then also pull it through the loop on the hook. After this, we're going to do another double stitch combination. This one is a half double crochet, so front loop, half double crochet, yarn over, pulling it through all 3, and then we're also doing in the same loop a front loop single crochet. So we're starting to see a bit more of a wave pattern happening here, and then we go on and do in the next stitch a front loop single crochet all by itself, and we continue on to make 5 front loop slip stitches to finish this wave off. So you can see the waves are starting to increase in size. They've got a little bit of a peak going on, and the gaps between the waves are getting a little bit smaller, but they're all still 12 stitch repeats. So that's wave 7. I'll go on and make another one exactly like that for wave 8. Alrighty, I've just finished the wave 8, which is the same as wave 7, and I'm ready to move on to wave 9. So this one starts with 1 front loop single slip stitch, and then we have 2 front loop single crochet, followed by a front loop half DC, then we get our double stitch combination, which is a front loop DC and a front loop extended DC, and as we finish that DC, there's the last 2 stitches that we're going to pick up into, and then we do a 2 chain top loop peacock. So we're going to do 1, 2 chains, and then we go back into the last 2 loops of the extended DC, yarn over, pull it through those 2 loops, and then also pull it through the first loop on the hook. Then we go on to our front loop HDC. This one twists a little bit, but that's okay. And then we also put into the same stitch a front loop single crochet, and then in the following loop we put in a front loop single crochet, and then we go on to do 5 front loop slip stitches. And wave 10 is the same as wave 9, so I'll just do the same again when I get to the end of the set of 12. You may notice that your work does contract a little bit, but gives the waves their 3-dimensional shape later on. It's okay that it's shrinking, it's expected, it's a good sign. You'll see it even more when we start doing the back loop, half loop, sorry, when we do the back, which is the half double crochet. Alrighty, I have finished wave 10, much ready to do wave 11. So this one starts with 2 front loop single crochet, and then it is a front loop half double crochet, and then another standalone front loop double crochet, and our double stitch combination is a extended DC in the front loop and a treble in the same front loop. And as we finish that treble, the last thing we have is the 2 loops on the hook. go yarn over and pull through those. It's those 2 loops that we're now going to use in our 2 chain top loop peacock. So we've done our 2 chain, and then we go back through those last 2 loops and go yarn over, pull it through the last 2 loops, and also pop it through the original loop on the hook. And then our next double stitch combination is a front loop DC and a front loop single crochet. So yarn over, put it through that front loop, pull it through, yarn over, pull it through 2, yarn over, pull it through 2, then going back into that front loop, we go yarn over, pull it through, and yarn over, pull it through both. And then it is a front loop single crochet followed by 5 front loop slip stitch. I have just finished wave 12, which is a repeat of wave 11, so I'm now ready to move on to wave 13, which is the big waves that we repeat to the end of the row. So I start with 2 front loop single crochet. And then I do a front loop half double crochet, then the double stitch combination is a front loop DC, and a front loop extended DC in the first double stitch, and then in the next stitch I do another double combination, which is a front loop treble, and a front loop extended treble, which is like an extended DC. You set up for a treble with 2 yarn overs, and then pull in 1 loop through the front loop. And then for the first, you go yarn over and you pull it through just 1, and then you can finish as usual. So yarn over and pull it through 2, yarn over and pull it through 2, and yarn over and pull it through the last 2. And here we make a 3 chain top loop peacock, so it's 1, 2, 3 chains, and then going back through the last 2 loops of the treble. We go yarn over, pull it through those, and also pull it through the original loop on the hook from the chain, and that gives us that distinctive little wave crest. The next double stitch combination in the front loop is an extended DC, combined with a half double crochet, and then it's a single crochet, and then we do our 5 front loop slip stitch to finish the wave. And then we're going to do that again and again, all the way to the end of the row. So a total of 9 of these waves, and for the first row we do 1 extra. So that's the sort of profile we're expecting to see in the big waves. It does curve a little bit there, which is fine. It gives us that contraction, which gives us the wonderful 3D texture.